The sixth step towards self realization is concentration on sound. Devotee asked Bhagwan Sri Raman Maharishi. Gujarati gentleman said that he was concentrating on sound nada and desired to know if the method was right. Bhagwan said meditation on nada is one of the various approved methods. Its adherents claim a very special virtue for it. According to them, it is the easiest and most direct method. Just as a child is lulled to sleep by lullabies, so nada suits one to the state of samadhi. Again, just a king sends his state musicians to welcome his son on his return from a long journey, so also nada takes the devotee into the Lord's abode in a pleasing manner. Nada helps concentration, but after it begins to be felt, the practice should not be made an end in itself. Nada is not the objective, the subject should firmly be held, otherwise, a blank will result, though the subject is there even in the blank. One must remember his own self. Nada upasana, meditation on sound is good. It is better if associated with self inquiry. The seventh step towards self realization is concentration on the heart or between the eyebrows. Concentration on the point between the eyebrows is yogic practice. Bhagwan recognized its efficacy, especially when combined with incantation, but recommended concentration on the heart on the right side as being both safer and more effective. A Maharashtra lady of middle age who had studied Gyaneshwari and Vichara Sagra and was practicing concentration between the eyebrow had felt shivering and fear and did not progress. She required guidance. The Maharishi told her not to forget the seer. The sight is fixed between the eyebrows, but the seer is not kept in view. If the seer be always remembered, it will be all right. A visitor said, we are asked to concentrate on the spot in the forehead between the eyebrows. Is that right? Bhagwan said everyone is aware that he exists, yet one ignores that awareness and goes about in search of God. What is the use of fixing one's attention between the eyebrows? The aim of such advice is to help the mind to concentrate. It is one of the forcibly methods of checking the mind and preventing its dissipation. The mind is forcibly into one channel, and this is a help to concentration, but the method of realization is the inquiry, who am I? The present trouble affects the mind and it can only be removed by the mind. Devotee asked, Sri Bhagwan speaks of the heart as the seat of consciousness and as identical with the self. What exactly does the word heart signify? Bhagwan said the question about the heart arises because you are interested in seeking the source of consciousness. To all deep thinking minds, the inquiry about the I and its nature has an irresistible fascination. Call it by any name, God, self, and the heart of the or the seat of consciousness. It is all the same. The point to be grasped in this, the heart means the very core of one's being, the center without which there is nothing whatever. Devotee asked, but Sri Bhagwan has specified a particular place for the heart within the physical body, that is in the chest, two digits to the right of the median. Bhagwan said, yes, that is the center of spiritual experience according to the testimony of sages. The spiritual heart center is quite different from the blood propelling muscular organ known by the same name. The spiritual heart center is not an organ of the body. All that you can say of the heart is that it is the core of your being, that with which you are really identical, as the word in Sanskrit literally means. Whether you are awake, asleep, or dreaming, whether you are engaged in work or immersed in samadhi, devotee asked, in that case, How can it be localized in any part of the body? Fixing as a for the heart would imply setting psychological limitations to that which is beyond space and time. Bhagwan said this is right, but the person who puts the question about the position of the heart considers himself as existing with or in the body. While putting the question now, would you say that your body alone is here, but that you are speaking from somewhere else? No, you accept your bodily existence. It is from this point of view that any reference to a physical body comes to be made. Simply speaking, pure consciousness is indivisible. It is without parts, it has no form or shape, no within or without. There is no right or left. Pure consciousness, which is the heart, includes all and nothing is outside or apart from it. That is the ultimate truth. Devotee asked, how shall I understand Sri Bhagwan's statement that the experience of the heart center is at that particular place in the chest? Bhagwan said, pure consciousness, wholly unrelated to the physical body and transcending the mind, is a matter of direct experience. Sage know their bodiless, eternal existence, just as an unrealized man knows his bodily existence. But the experience of consciousness can be with bodily awareness as well as without it. In the bodiless experience of pure consciousness, the sage is beyond time and space, and no question about the position of the heart can arise at all. Since, however, the physical body cannot subsist with life apart from consciousness, bodily awareness has to be sustained by pure consciousness. The former by nature is limited and can never be coextensive with the later, which is infinite and eternal. Body consciousness is merely a miniature reflection of the pure consciousness with which the sage has realized his identity. For him, therefore, body consciousness is only a reflected ray, as it were, of the self effulgent, infinite consciousness which is in himself. It is in this sense alone that the sage is aware of his bodily existence. Devotee said, for men like me who have neither the direct experience of the heart nor the consequent recollection, the matter seems to be somewhat difficult to grasp. About the position of the heart itself, perhaps we must depend upon some sort of guesswork. Bhagwan said, if the determination of the position of the heart is to depend on guesswork, even in the case of the unrealized, the question is surely not worth much consideration. Not it is not on guesswork that you have to depend, it is an unerring intuition. Devotee asked, who has the intuition? Bhagwan said, all people. Devotee asked, does Bhagwan credit me with an intuitive knowledge of the heart? Bhagwan said, no, not of the heart, but of the position of the heart in relation to your identity. Devotee asked, Sri Bhagwan says that I intuitively know the position of the heart in the physical body. Bhagwan said, why not? Devotee said, pointing to himself, it is to me personally that Bhagwan is referring. Bhagwan said, yes, this is the intuition. How did you refer to yourself by gesture just now? Did you not put your finger on the right side of the chest? That is exactly the place of the heart center. Devotee asked, so then, in the absence of direct knowledge of the heart center, I have to depend on this intuition. Bhagwan said, what is wrong with it? When a schoolboy says, it is I that did the sum correctly, or when he asks you, shall I run and get the book for you, would he point to the head that did the sum correctly, or to the legs that will swiftly get you that book? No, in both cases his finger is pointed quite naturally towards the right side of the chest, thus giving innocent expression to the profound truth, and that the source of I-ness in him is there. It is an unerring intuition that makes him refer to himself to the heart, which is the self. In that way, the act is quite involuntary and universal. That is to say, it is the time in the case of every individual. What stronger proof than this do you require about the position of the heart center in the physical body? Devotee said, but the question is, which is the correct view of the two, namely, that the center of spiritual experience is the place between the eyebrow, or that it is the heart? Bhagwan said, for the purpose of practice, you may concentrate between the eyebrows if you like. It would then be bhavana or imaginative contemplation of the mind, whereas the supreme state of anubhava or realization with which you become wholly identified and in which your individuality is completely dissolved transcends the mind, then there can be no objectified center to be experienced by you as a subject distinct and separate from it. Devotee asked, I would like to put my question in slightly different words. Can the place between the eyebrows be said to be the seat of the self? Bhagwan said, you agreed that the self is the ultimate source of consciousness and that it subsists equally during all the three states of mind. But see that what happens when a person in meditation is overcome by sleep. As the first symptom of sleep, his head begins to nod. But this could not happen in the self, for situated between the eyebrow, that center cannot be called its seat without implying that the self often forsakes its own place, which is absurd. The fact is that sadhaka may have his experience at any center or chakra on which he concentrates his mind, but he doesn't make such a center to the seat of the self. Devotee asked, since Bhagwan says that the self may function at any of the centers or chakras while its seat is in the heart, is it possible that by the practice of intense concentration or dhyana between the eyebrows, this center may itself become the seat of the self? Bhagwan said, as long as it is merely the stage of practice by concentration in order to control your attention at one spot, any consideration about the seat of the self would merely be theorizing. You consider yourself the subject, the seer, and the place whereon you fix the attention become the object seen. This is merely bhavana. When, on the contrary, you see the seer himself, you merge in the self, you become one with it. That is the heart. Devotee asked, then the practice of concentration between the eyebrows advisable? Bhagwan said, the final result of the practice of any kind of dhyana is that the object on which the aspirant fixes his mind ceases to exist as distinct, the separate from the subject. Subject and object become one self, and that is the heart. The practice of concentration on the center between the eyebrow is one of the methods of training, and thereby thoughts are effectively controlled for the time being. The reason is that all thought is an outer activity of the mind, and thought in the first instance follow sight, physical or mental. It is important, however, that this practice of fixing one's attention between the eyebrows should be accompanied by incantations, because next to importance to the eye of the mind is the ear of the mind, that is mental visualization of speech, either to control and thereby strengthen the mind, or to distract and thereby dissipate it. Therefore, while fixing the mind's eye on a center, or as for instance between the eyebrows, you should also practice the mental articulation of a divine name or incantation. Otherwise, you will soon lose hold on the object of concentration. This kind of practice leads to the identification of the name, word or self, whatever you may call it, but with the center selected for the purpose of meditation, pure consciousness, the self or the Heart is the final realization. Is Sahasrara. Devotee asks, why doesn't Sri Bhagwan direct us to practice concentration on some particular center or chakra? Bhagwan said the Yoga Shastras say that the Sahasrara or brain is the seat of the self. The Purusha Sukta declares that the heart is its seat to enable the aspirant to steer clear of any possible doubt. I tell him to take up the thread or the clue of I-ness and follow it to its source, because firstly it is impossible for anybody to entertain any doubt about this I notion. Secondly, whatever be the method means adopted, the final goal is realization of the source of I amness, which is what you begin from in your experience. If you therefore practice self inquiry, you will reach the heart, which is the self. Devotee asked, does the Jivanadi subtle nerve column really exist, or is it a figment of the imagination? Bhagwan said the yogis say that there is a nadi called the Jivan Nadi, Atma Nadi. The Upanishads speak of a center from which thousands of nadis branch off. Some locate this in the brain and other in the other places. And the Garbha Upanishad praises the formation of the fetus and the growth of the child in the womb. The ego is considered to enter the child through the fontanelle in the 7th month of its growth. In evidence thereof, it is pointed out that the fontanelle is tender in a baby and is also seen to pulsate. It takes some months for it to ossify. Thus, the ego comes from above, enters through the fontanelle, and works through thousands of nadis which are spread over the whole body. Therefore, the seeker of truth must concentrate on the Sahasrara, that is in the brain, in order to regain his source. Breath control is said to help the yogi to rouse the Kundalini Shakti, which lies coiled in the solar plexus. The Shakti rises through a nerve called the Sushmana, which is embedded in the core of the spinal cord and extends to the brain. If one concentrates on the Sahasrara, there is no doubt that the ecstasy of Samadhi ensues. The Vasanas, that is the latencies, are however not destroyed. The yogi is therefore bound to wake up from Samadhi, because the release from bondage is not yet accomplished. He must still try to eradicate the Vasanas in order that the latent tendencies yet inherent in him may not disturb the peace of his Samadhi. So he passes down from the Sahasrara to the heart through what is called the Jivan Nadi, which is only a continuation of the Sushmana. The Sushmana is the curve. It starts from the solar plexus, rises through the spinal cord to the brain, and from there bends down and ends in the heart. When the yogi has reached the heart, Samadhi becomes permanent. Thus, we see that the heart is the final center. Some Upanishads also speak of 101 nadis which spread from the heart, one of them being the vital nadi. If the ego descends from above and is reflected in the brain, as the yogis say, there must be a reflecting surface. This must also be capable of limiting the infinite consciousness to the limits of the body. In short, the universal being becomes limited as an ego. Such a reflecting medium is furnished by the aggregate of vasanas of the individual. It acts like the water in a pot which reflects an object. If the pot is drained of its water, there will be no reflection. The object will remain without being reflected. The object here is the universal being consciousness, which is all pervading and therefore immanent in all. It need not be cognized by reflection alone, it is self resplendent. Therefore, the seeker's aim must be to drain away the vasanas from the heart and let no reflecting medium obstruct the light of the eternal consciousness. This is achieved by the search for the origin of the ego and by diving into the heart. This is the direct path to self realization. One who adopts it need not worry about nadis, brain, Sushmana, Kundalini, breath control, and the six yogic centers. The self doesn't come from anywhere, nor does it center the body through the crown of the head. It is as it is, ever shining, ever steady, unmoving and unchanging. The changes which are noticed are not inherent in the self, for the self abides in the heart and is self luminous like the sun. The changes are seen in its light. The relationship between the self and the body or the mind may be compared to that of a clear crystal and its background. If the crystal is placed against a red flower, it shines red, if against green, it shines green, and so on. The individual confines himself to the limits of the changeable body or of the mind, which derives its existence from the unchanging self. All that is necessary is to give up this mistaken identity, and that one, the ever shining self, will be seen to be the single non dual reality.